welcome to the Two Sons Podcast. Happy Wednesday, everybody. Ahsoka is here, and I had looked at the reviews, and they were good. They were in like the mid 80s or something like that. But the consensus among critics was like it mixes new elements of Star Wars with old elements of Star Wars. And as soon as I saw that, I was like, That's what we need.
That's what we're asking for.
We need a little bit of new, a little bit of old. Like you could take old kind of like themes and mix them with new plot, and you can get good things. And I feel like Dave Filoni has now. Okay, it remains to be seen how this ends because I'm going to talk to you a little bit towards the once we get a little bit further in about like some of the ways I think this could go south in terms of just my interpretation of it. But like through 2 episodes. Like you're completely confounded by where this is all going.
Yep.
We've unleashed Star Wars concepts that are almost beyond our comprehension in a lot of different ways. I'm pretty excited about it.
Yeah, dude, I'm so stoked. I think that there's a fair chance that Ahsoka could become mainstream.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, and like they like what you're talking about. They invested heavily in advertisement. I mean, like you cannot turn over your shoulder without seeing an Ahsoka advertisement, whether it be on social media, whether it be on TV. I mean, they're hitting it hard.
One note on that, though, what's funny is like I said that to someone else the other day. I think I said it to Carly, and Carly's like, yeah, I've barely seen anything on it.
Well, Carly's
like, I think the algorithm is like these idiots.
I know.
They want some Star Wars.
Well,
content.
like what I was telling you about, like Instagram knows that I'm a dad, so then it suckered me into buying this like $40 little sports toy car for Graham. Graham can't even hold his head up, and I bought him a $40 car.
Carly and I were literally talking about this last night, like how like companies and their advertisers like win when they get you and
I know.
Way. And I use the example of Paul Reed Smith. Like I just imagine like their marketing team sitting down and they're going like, all those nerdy OCD dudes are gonna be obsessed with quality. Let's just hammer quality. And it's like me. I'm nerdy dude who they got me.
They got you, dude.
You know what I mean?
They're like like the Jason Timpf like Hoops Tonight podcast guy. Like that's our sucker. That's who we're advertising for.
Yeah, it's like they won because like I'm a total Paul Reed Smith stan now. And I like just talk about it all the time. But like, there's no doubt that the algorithm was very, very attuned to the fact that you and I were pining for some Star Wars content.
They knew I liked a minimalistic, just really slick looking toy, and I bought one.
Yeah, they got you. That's a cool looking little toy car. Though.
It's cool, dude. It's like remnant of 80s style F1 cars. It's really cool.
Dude,
it's really cool.
G's gonna be a fan. Also, dude, like I wanted to get into this a little bit later. I'll save it for the end of the show. Right. But the Gran Turismo movie was actually super interesting.
Oh, is it?
On a bunch of different levels.
All right,
but we'll get to that later.
All right.
Anyway, so
Ahsoka.
we have
Jason, let's just talk about like politics instead of doing Ahsoka. What do you? Yeah, you guys want to hear politics, right?
Healthcare? No.
Yeah, let's talk about healthcare.
I look at there's like 4 kind of major themes from this that we need to unpack. We need to unpack this thing with the 2 galaxies and that kind of stuff, which we're going to start with because I find that to be the most interesting.
Yeah.
Then there's the whole dynamic with Ahsoka and Sabine apparently beginning a master-apprentice relationship at some point, presumably between the final episode of Rebels and this.
Yeah.
And then we have the concept of Grand Admiral Thrawn and everything associated with him.
Good guy, bad guy, who knows?
Exactly. And then we have everything surrounding Baylan Skoll and
his apprentice.
And his 2 apprentices.
Yeah, apprentice.
So, apprentice. Yes, exactly. So, let's start with the other galaxy thing. So, a couple of details that we know. We discover that the magistrate is actually a Dathomirian Night Sister, which you had pointed out in our preview.
Star Wars Explained called that.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. And the dead giveaway was the Green Flame, and that was a really good pickup. What's the gentleman who runs Star Wars Explained's name?
I forget his name.
Okay, shout out Star Wars Explained guy. You did quality work as always.
Again.
Yes.
Congratulations on continuing to be one of the best.
Incredible at what you do. So we find out that she's a Dathomirian Night Sister. Apparently she's been hearing voices through the void, essentially. That's kind of the way I interpreted it, is that she's been hearing communications from Thrawn. She's also obviously running these secret operations with like essentially Empire holdouts or for the Empire.
I know, on Corellia.
Yeah,
that was cool.
Yeah, no, but the whole thing with the way I kind of interpreted that is like the magistrate essentially is here in the galaxy. She's been hearing voices from the beyond. She clearly had an old relationship with Thrawn, so she seems to think that Thrawn's coming back, and so she's prepping for him with everything she's doing out of the Corellian shipyards, including building this Eye of Sion thing to go get him.
Right.
But essentially
a giant ship that can go very far into the galaxy.
Yeah,
like the nether regions of the galaxy.
Kind of like what we saw in like Interstellar. Well, Interstellar is probably a bad example, but like all those shows that show like the big convoy ship that's going through space that's like delivering a group of humans to go colonize another planet. Like, that's kind of the way I looked at it. Is like essentially like a massive ship that's capable of undergoing a really long hyperspace mission.
Yeah.
But what I thought was interesting is we basically discover now through the symbolism surrounding all of the artifacts that we discovered that those little space whales, Purgles, very well maybe from that galaxy or something associated with that galaxy, because they were all over the symbolism. And so what I really like about that is it kind of,
I love a good Purgle.
Oh yeah, they're dope. And they provide a legitimate explanation for how Thrawn and Ezra might have survived.
Right.
Because now we're no longer looking at them as just like Minox that drag somebody into hyperspace. They're like these sentient beings that live in the vacuum of space.
Right.
Who very easily could traverse massive distances because they live in the vacuum of space. And they essentially drag Ezra and Thrawn to this alternate galaxy.
You don't think... Because I don't. You don't think that that's where the Chiss ascendancy is, correct? Okay.
No, to be clear, because we know that the unknown regions is kind of like right there up by the outer rim, and there's like Batu's in that area. And
the
Makija,
Chiss ascendancy is way closer than what this other galaxy is.
You could get there in a couple of days. This is not. Yeah, you wouldn't need to create especially since
a special spaceship.
Thrawn regularly went on missions to lesser space.
That's a good point.
So.
That's
lesser space, by the way, is what Thrawn refers to the normal galaxy as, because he's
better than us.
Better. So anyway, so there's a lot to unpack here, and like this, I want to kind of like start by addressing the elephant in the room, which is we saw the Eye of Zion's. So
Scion.
the Eye of Zion is this
Scion, as in like the car,
is like this giant ship that they're building to undergo this journey. They're taking essentially hyperdrive cores from old. Disassembled Star Destroyers putting them in there, which is really cool. And there's clearly multiple of them in the ring, because she mentions we just put in the last hyperdrive core, so we're getting ready to leave. And we see the cockpit.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And the cockpit is the very same cockpit that we see in the trailer.
Yep.
Grand Admiral Thrawn walking in his Empire dress whites.
Right.
As the Admiral.
Right.
So
no longer a flashback, correct?
Exactly. So now one of two things is true. Okay. Either he's like, fuck yeah, they picked me up. I'm ready to go back and just get going with the Empire. Let's go. I've got my shirt on. I'm ready to go. That's option one.
Okay.
Option two is those damn Purgles dragged me away, and I only had one outfit, and it was my Imperial Admiral. But they cleaned and pressed it for me before I left.
Those Purgles. No, dude, I think you're right. Well, no, he had to have found another outfit to wear. Like, he's Thrawn.
He's been gone for years.
I know, but when we meet Thrawn, he's like literally wearing like a loincloth, isn't he? Like, he's on that one planet.
Oh,
right?
yeah. We're going back into the woods.
We're going
here,
way
when the
back,
Empire picks up Thrawn, he's kind of acting like a
little bit barbarian.
Kind of, barbarian in the wilderness type of dude.
Yeah.
Marooned
on a planet.
Unless the Purgles had Thrawn and Ezra like do some weird shit, like live in their galaxy naked, and they'd be like, okay, you're going home now, here's our clothes, then chances are he's still with the Empire. So that was kind of a bummer for me.
And I've got a crazy take on Thrawn at the end of this, by the way.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is where I get concerned. I love the idea of opening up a portal to a new galaxy.
Mm-hmm.
And here's why. Because I'm with you. I think Rosario Dawson in Ahsoka is an absolute freaking star.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Grand Admiral Thrawn, as this like Benedict Cumberbatch type, Sherlock Holmes type of character, is also potentially a star.
Right.
So if you move to another galaxy, you open up the potential for those two characters to be the most important thing.
I feel you.
In that specific timeline.
Yeah.
If you drag like if this whole thing is just basically an Uber drive to go pick up Thrawn and bring him back to the galaxy, and we settle back because you and I talked about this in the preview, the idea of like recycling Star Wars concepts,
right, over and over and over
some
again.
sort of dramatic evil leader, whether it's Giancarlo Esposito, Grand Admiral Thrawn, Palpatine, Vader, Snoke, Ben Solo. If you retread we have a shit ton of ships, we're very austere and clean looking. We're evil. We're trying to take over the galaxy. If you just keep retreading those steps, I think it could run into being kind of redundant, repetitive, and stagnant.
Yeah, a little stale.
Whereas if you I'm so down for something different. I'm so down for something different. And you can always go back to the other Star Wars galaxy. Things like
the
High Republic.
Huh? Yeah, dude. So here's my
Lando.
crazy take. Here's my crazy take. I do think that Eye of Sion ship is an Uber driver for Thrawn. I do. And the reason why is they're leaning so hard into Thrawn like he's like this god figure, which he's not. Like he's awesome.
Thrawn doesn't even think he's a god figure.
Right. He's one of my favorite characters of all of Star Wars. But Thrawn, unless it serves a bigger good or the better good, will not be with bad dudes, right? And everyone's going to freak out and be like, what are you talking about? Thrawn's with the Empire. I get it. I totally understand. But he was for the Empire or with the Empire for specific reasons, which served his people, the Chiss Ascendancy. Yes. Right? So I wonder, here's my crazy take, is the magistrate, Balin, and his Padawan apprentice, go and pick him up. Apprentice. Oh, yeah, because there's Morik, which is like the Inquisitor-looking dude. Mm-hmm. They go pick him up, and Thrawn's like, hey, thanks. You guys read me wrong. I own you now. And I honestly think that that's going to happen.
You think so?
I think they're going to go essentially bail him out of jail, save him from some distant galaxy, and he's going to be like, thanks a lot. You guys read me wrong.
See,
That's a take. I know that's a take.
It's possible.
Yeah.
You'd wonder why I'd put the uniform on. I mean, I would get behind,
because he can't be naked.
No, this is what I think. Because I would love for that, but I just think about it from the standpoint of, how I like, and this is just something in general with the way that my entire perspective on media has changed since I started working in media, which is basically like anytime you conceptualize an idea for a film or for a show or even an episode of whatever sports show you want to listen to, you have to like kind of put yourself in the brain space of the production meeting.
Right.
So for instance, like if you are a Houston Rockets fan and you're like, the Rockets got a big win last night. They came back and beat the Pistons in double overtime on the road. And you're like, man, like I really want to hear about the Houston Rockets tomorrow from the Hoops Tonight show or from First Take. Let's just say First Take.
Yeah.
Like you have to imagine yourself in the production meeting. And like those guys aren't going to be like, hey, we're going to open up with Rockets Pistons from last night.
I feel you.
Because those two teams suck and they're not important enough. It's just not enough. They're going to sit down and they're going to be like, okay, looks like last night James Harden gave his coach a weird look out of the corner of his eye, and then everyone tweeted about it. So let's talk about that. Like that kind of, yeah, it's and again, like there's varying different types of shows, but the general idea is like they're sitting down trying to think about a way that gets you to watch within the scope of what is, kind of their brand as a show. Sure. So for Star Wars, when they're sitting down, and think of it this way, like with I'll give you the Gran Turismo example. Like when they sat down, there's the protagonist, which is Jan Mardenborough, right? Who's this dude who was one of the best Gran Turismo players in the world who became a race car driver.
Yeah.
But like his story is like him going into the racing league and having a certain amount of success, right? But like if they don't have a clear antagonist, then the film falls apart.
Yeah.
So they kind of create this character. It's this dude who's like this douchey ass like European dude who drives like a gold leaf plated Lamborghini, and he's just a dickhead throughout the entire film. Like he's a fake character who operates as the antagonist. Yeah. Now, so that you have to sit down in the production meeting and think, okay, we have our protagonist, which is Ahsoka.
Yeah.
And we need a strong antagonist. Mm-hmm. And it can't be the magistrate. She's not cool enough. Although it could be the magistrate theoretically, but like
I feel you.
It's more. I don't think because you got to think of it in the grand scheme of this era too, because it's not just the Ahsoka show. It's the Ahsoka show and then the inevitable Thrawn show. Or maybe there's a Thrawn show, maybe there's not. But like there's whatever shows lead up to this film, the Dave Filoni film.
Right.
So this is a big picture thing.
Oh, I see. You think
the magistrate? I don't think is big enough to use as the grand villain for this whole thing. Unless they think she's a star and that we're all going to fall in love with her over the course of the series.
Maybe.
But I think it makes sense from the standpoint of the production meeting for them to be like, Thrawn's the antagonist.
Yeah.
And Thrawn will be defeated at the end of the Filoni movie. And so that kind of drives me to think that that's the direction they're going. I'm right there with you. You know I'm right there with you.
Oh, dude, I know. No. And it's all speculation at this point because you know they're going to throw some cliffhangers in there. You know they're going to try and fool us with the plot a little bit. So, like, I am deeply enthralled in this. So, like, the way that
I had so much fun last night
written this and the way that they've produced it is incredible. It is the greatest combination of like old Star Wars meets new, and they did it beautifully. I thought it was so cool. They even threw in some cool stuff like the old school like PowerPoint scrolls screen change. Did you notice that?
Oh yeah.
That was such a vibe.
In terms of the cinematography, yeah,
such a vibe. Yeah.
In general, like I thought it had this like really interesting pacing too, where like it was fast paced in the sense that like literally in 2 episodes we saw almost everything from the trailers.
Yeah, I noticed
the only
that.
thing we didn't see from the trailers was literally the stuff where they're in that weird like void room where Balin and Ahsoka face off.
Right.
Which in theory could be in the next episode.
Yeah.
But like you could tell they were deliberate about like completely withholding the real plot lines.
Yeah.
And because like
they did a good job.
Two of the 8 episodes basically made up 95% of the trailer material.
And it didn't ruin the episodes.
No, not at all.
It was interesting to see. I'm going to skip ahead a little bit. It was interesting to see Sabine just get stabbed in the chest with a lightsaber.
Oh, dude!
I was like, dang! Like that happened fast. Like we knew she didn't die, of course, just because you see her with short hair in trailers, right? And she hasn't had the short hair yet. But that was pretty wild. And it's funny because Elena woke up and came and sat on the couch, and then she's watching that scene, and I was like, watch, Sabine's about to get her ass kicked right here. And sure enough, she did, which I'm happy they did that. Dude, seeing Lothal in live action was so cool.
Everything was great. Everything that turned into live action was great. I thought they cast Sabine perfect.
They did.
Like she is nailing that role.
Yeah.
Absolutely nailing that role.
Totally agree.
Rosario Dawson's doing great. You know, it's so funny to me because like this is an opinion that I've always felt very strongly about, like as it pertains to like equal representation in media. Like I'm 100% on board with that. But like you don't need to retread old, male characters or white guy characters. Like just make new characters.
Just make
and
new
if you make them dope, then they'll be awesome. Like this is such a great example of that. Like you have 3 incredible female characters and potentially 4 depending on what we learn about the magistrate in the long run.
Right. And one of the apprentice.
And one of the apprentice. But like all of them, like Ahsoka's obviously one of your and I's favorites from the beginning. What's the apprentice's name? The girl with the white hair.
Shinhati, I believe.
Something like that.
I forget her name.
Yeah, something like that.
Something like that.
That
could be way wrong.
I'm like so obsessed with her because she reminds me of Darth Zana.
She does. I was wondering if you're gonna pick that up.
Dude, just like that vibe.
She reminds me of like a cat like backed into a corner where she's just like pissed.
Dude, the Darth Zana thing, I would venture to guess that that Filoni actually used this as inspiration for Darth Zana because she literally was on the cover of the book and looked like exactly like this character. I'll find it and I'll show you.
But what Jason's referring to is some of the Legends material that isn't canon yet or maybe ever of Darth Bane. So Zana was one of Darth Bane's apprentices, and she was just a really, really cool, like cunning character. And dude, I know exactly what you're talking about on the cover of the book.
Yeah,
where she looks exactly like her. For sure.
Yeah, well, she always has blonde hair, and she's always got like these dark eyes,
and it's kind of short.
Yeah.
I know exactly what you're talking
but
about.
like she gives me that vibe, and like her whole character in the first 2 episodes is
cool.
great. And then Sabine is a super interesting character on a bunch of different levels because like, you know, we never learned of her as being force sensitive in the Rebel series, and what's the droid's name?
Chopper.
No, the other one.
Hu Yang?
Hu Yang.
Hu
Yeah.
Yang.
So, do we know how Hu Yang ends up with Ahsoka? Do you learn that in the
No,
book or something?
I forget how that happens, or maybe if one of our viewers remembers. I don't know how they get hooked up. Hu Yang has just been around for forever, and he's a really fun character.
He's great. But, his whole I was joking with Carly last night. I'm like, his whole role in this show is just to bombard the characters with facts.
Oh,
it's
I know.
I just imagine like a Sabine walking into the room and be like, oh my gosh, I'm so hungry. I haven't eaten all day. And then him just being like, I saw you eat crackers at 10:30 a.m. Something like that.
Well, dude, and I love the idea of just an absolute thesaurus on lightsaber hilts.
Oh, dude. Yeah,
it's so cool.
He was actually there.
Yeah,
when the lightsabers
built
were built.
them. Yeah, it's so cool. He's such a cool character.
So Sabine, it represents this interesting kind of concept of like Hu Yang straight up says like her affinity for the Force is in the bottom tier, essentially.
He just
that she's trained.
Which is like technically like everybody has some level of midichlorians, right? And like technically like everyone's slightly in tune to the Force, right? Like on a very low level, like for you to even register. For a force-sensitive person, like for example, like if Ahsoka has her eyes closed, and if I walked into a room, she'd be like, "Luke is here," right? And I'm not force-sensitive, obviously, but like I probably am slightly attuned to the Force in order for her to even register. And I wonder if that's going to be Sabine, like lowest level possible, and maybe they're trying to like. I don't know, train her, but I feel like she's not going to be anything significant.
I tend to think of her as like legitimately force sensitive,
dang,
but
son.
just on the lower tier of the Jedi that she's trained. I think it explains things like why she was such a gifted fighter in general.
Oh, that's a true point. Yeah, that's a true point.
But I love the way they lay her out in the sense that like she's if you want like she's half Jedi, half Mandalorian.
Dude,
like,
no, she's a 10th Jedi. 9/10 Mandalorian.
Well, and that's fair. But like the point is like her whole appeal is like they're building towards this idea that like she's not going to be the most powerful Force user in the world, but the combination of all of her abilities makes her a formidable adversary.
For sure.
And you just know we're going to end up with the Sabine revenge campaign against the Apprentice.
For sure.
We find out that Ahsoka essentially starts training her as her apprentice at some point in time, but they have some kind of falling out, which leads to Ahsoka to leave. And it appears to be associated with Ahsoka's frustrations with Sabine's just general personality and headstrongness.
Right.
And like, it's funny because like Sabine really, really, really screws things up in this. Like just a royal screw up.
For sure.
Is explicitly told like, this is essentially like a top priority,
like one of the most valuable things in the galaxy.
Yeah, this map is like the key to a war. We must protect it.
Yeah.
Do not take it away. And she's like, okay, she left the room. I'm taking it away.
I'm going to go to my little tower that's miles and miles and miles away from anybody that can help me. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And gets messed up by the apprentice and her droids and ends up getting the map stolen.
Those HK assassin droids, top tier droids, so cool.
Oh, dude, they're very cool. What was cool though is like when Sabine was in the hospital bed. It's funny because there are cliches, but like cliches are all about delivery. Mm-hmm. Like if you overuse them and you don't, then they fall flat on their face. But like it's one of those things where like you're as the watcher thinking like, God, Sabine really screwed this up. And so like when Ahsoka goes like, you've done enough, and then walks out of the room, like that's such a cliche. You see that in movies all the time. Like you're like, yeah, you know what, Sabine, you have done enough. So you just sit down and be quiet.
Yeah, you just screwed that. Really quick before we get away from the map Sabine thing, there was one time, and I'm sure you picked up on this, where I felt like I was just pulled out of the Star Wars universe a little bit, where I was like, that's a little bit distracting. When so like Ahsoka has the map, which is like that sphere, right? And they're like, we cannot figure out how to open this thing or to figure this out. And Sabine goes into her little lair, and then she's like doing all this crazy stuff with like holo projections, and she's like, oh, three, like what is this? And then she just spins like two things on the map, and all of a sudden it just clicks into into gear. I was like, if it was that easy, like everyone and their brother would have figured it out.
No, you didn't see. So like the actual pattern. So there was like
right, it's like the Trinity pattern.
Yeah, but there were specific patterns that were supposed to be in specific spots.
True.
And she saw that from the holo projection of the floor in the temple. And she didn't identify. At first, she was looking at the people, and then at first she was looking at the outside of the temple, and she's looking at all these different things. She eventually identifies that center symbol is on the thing, so she builds the piece around the. That actually made sense to me. I will say though, I am so down for the idea of this alternate galaxy and it being a thing that they kind of dive into, but I'm worried that they're not going to, and that's something that concerns me.
Yeah, dude, my biggest concern is they get Thrawn wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep, me too, man. And there's a decent chance that they do.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, like I will at least understand the premise behind having Thrawn be an antagonist, and I think there's a way they can do it.
Yeah.
Similar to the sense that like you look at because like I'll give you the example with Thanos. Okay, so Thanos wants to kill half the people in the universe, but the reason why is like his own world crumbled into a massive civil war and was obliterated. And like there's the scene where he's pulling the moon down and he's in that big fight and they literally like the chick's putting him to sleep and they're like this close to getting the glove off his hand and killing him. That's on his home planet, Thanos' home planet, and you see it's like literally in ruins.
Right.
And he actually uses one of the stones to like demonstrate to the Avengers that his planet used to be this lush green paradise and it got destroyed. And so you actually kind of like, he basically is saying like, if I defeat half the people in the universe, I'll essentially permit the other half to survive in a way that they would kill themselves. And so there's that. Now that to me is like still obviously insane, but like at least there's like, you start to see
there's
like
a theory. There's like
theory.
An immediate theory that he's going off of, and he's not just a crazy person.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think Thrawn would have to be even like way more reasonable. But I could get on board with Thrawn wanting to essentially relaunch the Empire if they had like a really clear, like drawn out process to where like because there's these moments kind of like with Hera Syndulla where the Kalikori, the piece of art from Hera's homeworld, where he's like, I will keep this in a place of honor. And she's like, screw you, bro. Like basically, and the vibe you're picking up there is like, he's genuinely well-intentioned.
Right.
But she's like, but you're still evil, clearly. There's this clear delineation, Yeah. And I'm interested in them, if they can flush out that concept to where like everything Thrawn's doing truly serves a purpose that makes sense for Thrawn and his ultimate goal for the Chiss Ascendancy in the galaxy and all these different things. So for instance, I would be so down for, I need a powerful fleet of ships, because this is something he's always believed in. A versatile, powerful fleet of ships in the existing known galaxy for the means with which to protect the Chiss Ascendancy from some sort of other threat. If they did something like that, I'd be on board. But it can't just be like, I want to rule the galaxy, because that just wouldn't make any sense.
And we have to be down for maybe a little bit of two Thrawns. Like, for example, like Timothy Zahn's Thrawn is way more benevolent than what we see in Rebels, which is Dave Filoni's Thrawn. We also have to remember, too, that we're watching Dave Filoni's Thrawn this time. Like, Dave Filoni wrote that, right?
That's good.
So we've got to be down for a little bit of a dual Thrawn happening here, but I just hope they don't go completely off the tracks.
For sure. Yeah. And even with the Dave Filoni Thrawn, there's a few things that you don't like him bombarding Lothal. There's a couple of moments where he's a little bit of a jerk, but for the most part, like he has a great deal of respect for his opponents. He's strictly is viewing everything as almost like a board game.
It's always a strategy.
Yeah, and you pick up like I thought Dave Filoni did a decent job, and in Dave Filoni's defense as well. Like, I don't know if he had access to all of the books. I think they were being written simultaneously.
Yeah, I don't know
the Rebel series.
Yeah, they might have been. Yeah, I don't know the exact timeline on that.
So now that we've hit Thrawn and we've hit Ahsoka and Hera and Sabine, and now that we've hit the other galaxy thing, the last thing I wanted to hit on was Baylan.
Okay.
So Baylan's a former Jedi, clearly.
Mm-hmm.
I think that, and I thought they were this close to doing it when the apprentice asks him like, what are we going to do when we find Thrawn? But I thought he was about to be like, we're going to restore the Sith or say something along those lines. I want him so badly to lean into the Sith thing because I think it'd be so cool if there was a scene at some point in this season where essentially Balin goes like in the old ways, there was only two, and they're like in him to basically pitch why that was flawed in his opinion. And be like, this is why I have two apprentices because of XYZ.
I see.
Or if they're going to be like, we're the two Sith and this other dude's like our assassin.
That's kind of what I'm viewing that as.
That's what you're looking
Morok.
at?
Yeah, Morok the Inquisitor.
Looks like a former Inquisitor, most likely.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. No, I think he's similar to what like Maul was at one point.
No. Yeah, I think the same thing. And I'm really curious to see how they flush that out. I mean, it's a little bit of a bummer because it's only going to be a one season storyline because the gentleman who played Balin passed away. I can't remember what the guy's name is, but he's done an outstanding job. I thought that first scene of them raiding the Republic capital ship to steal the magistrate was just an incredible Star Wars scene.
So cool.
I was really interested in. At first, I was like, man, I wonder if they did this on purpose. Did you pick up on like kind of just the bridge dynamics at the beginning?
In some way. Like, what do you mean by that?
So you have the captain of the ship.
Right.
He's got control of the bridge. He's communicating with the comms officer. When he leaves the bridge, he gives command of the bridge to someone else.
Sure.
And the reason why that matters is like that's the whole concept of like naval bridge dynamics is a huge part of the Thrawn books.
It is. Okay, I know what you're talking about.
I would be so down for like if they did bring Thrawn back in episode 4 and then had a 4-episode arc involving Thrawn waging war on the galaxy, I would be so down to see a bunch of like naval battles between Thrawn and the Republic, and like I would be down for that kind of thing.
Especially set out like a chess match. That'd be so cool.
Yeah.
No, that would be super, super sick. That intro scene and then the way that they filmed it afterwards when Ahsoka was rolling up on that capital ship and how all the debris field was still around the ship, that was such a cool touch that like I don't really know if I've ever seen that in Star Wars, any like live action Star Wars, where like they actually keep the debris field like around the ship. Like that was such a neat touch.
That was interesting too because like essentially they went in and killed everybody on the ship, and then they must have left the ship and then just shot it to pieces for the sake of scuttling it, making it so that, which makes some sense because like if you're thinking of this as like a big picture war against the New Republic, and you've basically de-staffed a ship, like gotten rid of everybody staffing the ship,
everybody.
But you didn't want the Republic to be able to use the ship anymore. Because like they actually say like somebody says something along the lines of like they scuttled one of our new capital ships or something like that.
Which is just such a punch to the gut. Home One.
Home One. It's the same Mon Calamari cruiser from Return of the Jedi.
And then the interior is like spot on. Oh, it's all of it.
So
really quick, wait, before we get into that, Balin, really quick. When he was talking to the magistrate and she says you need to kill Ahsoka, and he's like sad. Or he says something along the lines of sad, and then she's like, "Oh, sentimental," and he's just like, "No, just like honest."
Yeah.
Like that was really interesting.
What did he say? I'm trying to remember.
Something like synonymous with honest.
Yeah, it was something. I can't remember what it was, but yeah, it was almost like weirdly in bringing in a little bit of respect.
Right. For getting rid of the Jedi.
And also like, oh no, that's what he says. He goes, "There's just not many Jedi left."
Yeah.
There's something along those lines. But like the Balin thing, I'm really interested to see them flush out because I do think it's possible that they view themselves more as like dark Jedi that are mercenaries, because he literally says at one point he's like, and well paid for it. He says that to the magistrate.
Yeah, true.
And it's very possible that he does have a great deal of respect for the Jedi and has no angst towards the Jedi, but is rather just operating his own little operation within the galaxy. It's very possible.
It is. It is. Yeah. But I cut you off when you're talking about Home One.
So have you ever heard the phrase Home One before?
I believe so, yeah. Show? I thought I had.
Okay, so I don't know if I've seen it in anything else, but I'm pretty sure I saw it in X-Wing Alliance, the old video game I used to play.
No way.
So X-Wing Alliance had 2 calamari capital ships, the same 2 that are in Return of the Jedi, which is basically the main capital ship that's got all the bumps on it. But there's a different one that kind of has like more of a tan color, like the color of your shirt, and it's got 2 big fins on the side. And you actually see one of those get blown up in Return of the Jedi by the Death Star. But there's basically 2 classes of the Mon Calamari capital ship. And in X-Wing Alliance, you start as like this freighter. You and your family kind of work on this like freighter, and you're doing all these like jobs. But then eventually, what ends up happening is halfway through the game, or a third of the way through the game, your family gets just screwed over by the Empire. It's actually this really X-Wing Alliance was an excellent game. Anybody out there who, if you guys are listening and you played X-Wing Alliance, drop it in the comments, because this is nostalgia personified for me. But like literally, like you at one point you show up at home base and like a couple of Star Destroyers show up and they just start like screwing things up, and you have to actually run away, and your home base gets essentially captured, and you immediately are pissed off, so you join the rebellion.
Sick.
And you become a combat pilot for the rebellion, and you start running missions. And it actually goes all the way through to you actually fight in the battle over Endor. Sick. And help destroy the Death Star, right?
That's cool.
So it is really, really cool. But you eventually start running missions out of the Rebel fleet, kind of similar to what you saw in Return of the Jedi in the end of Empire Strikes Back, where it's just literally kind of like a flotilla of ships that's traveling around the galaxy.
Flotilla.
In order to remain secretive, right?
That's cool.
So in that game, you could always like move your targeting around to different ships, right? So like you could cycle through.
Oh, I see.
Every ship in range would have like an identifier, and the main calamari cruiser, the one from Return of the Jedi, was always identified as Home One.
That's sick
in the video game.
That's sick.
And so when I saw that, I was like, this is so cool, like, because it just immediately, and you see Admiral Akbar on the bridge too, like communicating.
You for sure
with
think
them.
that was Admiral Akbar?
Oh, that was absolutely Admiral Akbar.
Like obviously, I was like, hey, is that Admiral Akbar?
They don't shoot him into the vacuum of space for another 25 years so that they can bring on the purple-haired admiral, bro.
Dude. The Haldo maneuver. No, there's just like a lot of like really cool like little touches, and what we love is them paying attention to like the subtle details and not just completely jacking things up, and they did that. Like we see the Phantom, which is what Hera's cruising around in, which is actually a part of the Ghost, which is a larger ship, like their home, right? Like, so it's cool that was in there. Like Chopper being thrown in there and just being this like angsty like droid, like they threw that in there. Dude, the music that they chose for these 2 episodes,
the music, the whole vibe is gorgeous, great, very different too.
Yeah, it was different. Yeah, so it was just beautiful music, and like even like the modified scroll, like they like in the beginning of the first episode when they had like the scroll going on. I loved that. But they were classy about it, because they didn't do like the tilted yellow scroll, like they did like I think it was red, and it was just
red,
like
and
straight
it was just
up
like
and down.
Straight up and down.
Yeah, and it was just like, that's so cool, because it's still like, and it was like a little touch for like the original Star Wars, but it was updated and still unique. Like, dude, so many little things that they did was just like so cool.
I thought of that as like kind of like a sign of a new age of Star Wars.
Yeah, I thought so too.
To me, that was like kind of a signifier of like this. We're in the Filoni age now.
Right.
Like he's running. Like that's kind of the way I look at it.
That's what this should be called, the Filoni age.
Yeah, and I hope.
Yeah.
I actually actively thought several times last night about the potential for Star Wars to eventually disavow the 789.
Dude, I don't think
in the distant future. It'd be like 10 years from now.
Maybe.
But I could see them eventually like essentially announcing that as Legends.
Oh, that'd be so sick.
And it would be based on the reason why I look at that is like it at a certain point, that whole storyline surrounding 789 is very difficult to do anything additional with. Either.
Yeah.
And so from that standpoint, like if they scuttled it entirely, they honor George Lucas's original story. I saw this thing on Instagram the other day. It was actually super interesting. It was like the sequel trilogy makes every one of George Lucas's characters a failure. Did you see that by any chance? I think I sent it to you.
It makes sense to me. So, it makes the entire plot of Star Wars a failure.
Yeah.
Palpatine's back. He's been back the entire time.
Exactly.
Great.
You lost, and he has more weapons now,
which just pisses everybody off, because Star Wars is literally a story of good versus evil and good winning.
Dude, he broke it down. He goes, Han Solo was a smuggler who grew to become a husband, a general,
a dad,
and a dad, and like and it's like, nope, episode 7, him and his wife are separated and he's back to smuggling.
Dude. And his son stabs him in the chest, gut chest.
Yeah, gut chest, and then he immediately dies. But it depends. You only die if it fits the plot, if you get stabbed in the stomach. Otherwise,
Sabine got stabbed in the right lower lobe of her lung, but that's okay. Because it only glanced her liver and her right lower lobe.
But he goes he's like Luke, finally restores the Jedi, all the stuff, and then he basically quits, and then he's like Leia. I can't remember what the Leia one was, but like he kind of goes through the list and kind of breaks down each character, and it's true. It's like literally every character from Star Wars is basically just in order to recycle old plot points for money. Gets treated as a failure, it's a huge bummer because like. I was sitting there thinking, I was like, another reason I could get behind Thrawn, and maybe this works, and maybe they'll be able to pull this off anyway, but like, I would just love to view a Star Wars story as the most important thing happening in the galaxy.
That's a good point, man.
And like,
not some ancillary story. Like, what is the biggest thing happening? Is that what you're saying?
Exactly.
I feel you.
And one of the things that still gets tricky here is characters like Ahsoka and Sabine and Hera are not involved at all in the Resistance.
I see.
And that just implies that they end up somewhere else or that they die.
Yeah.
And these are all things I'm excited to see them flush out. I think
Dave Filoni's good at stuff like that.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah. I'm just genuinely really, really excited to see where this goes. This next 6 weeks is going to be incredible. Yeah. I'm definitely a fan of where this is going. I'm just curious to see like where Dave Filoni lands the plane.
Yeah, I have faith in Filoni. We trust, right?
Mm-hmm. Did you have any other small things you wanted to hit on?
I don't think so, man. I think that was about it. Like they had, a couple characters that you see in Rebels, like Governor Azadi. That was kind of dope.
That was cool. Yeah.
And
live
then,
action.
And then the
same voice too.
Was it?
I'm almost certain that's the Doo-Doo voice too.
Speaking of voices, when the HK assassin droids are talking, they sounded exactly like Kylo Ren.
Really?
Yeah. So in the beginning, when Ahsoka gets out of that like tomb and she's like something along like the lines of like, "Oh, you're here," and then the droid is like, "We are here," and then all the droids, she sees all the droids surrounding her. Like they sounded exactly like Kylo Ren, which is kind of cool. But yeah, man. And then the new governor of Lothal is I forget how to say his name. It's like Jai Kal or something like that. And apparently he's actually recycled Rebels character that was like way lesser Rebels character that Ezra Bridger bumps into at some point. So like there's just like a couple really cool things. My other crazy take is this: I bet we see live action Lone Wolves.
Oh, I think that's almost a certainty.
It would be so sick.
Yeah,
it would be so. Like Lone Wolves.
They did the Wolf Cats for pretty well too.
They did, dude. Those were cool. They did a great job on them. So yeah, dude, I'm totally enjoying this. It's awesome. Loving it.
All right, guys, that is all we have for today. As always, we sincerely appreciate your support, and we will see you exactly 1 week from today.
Thanks a lot.